What's up, guys? Okay, so this video is just going to be detailing what I've done with Arch Linux. I've got Arch Linux running on a host, over there, and I've got two separate kernels. One of them boots with vfio enabled, one of them boots with it off. My system involved a little bit of extra setup because it's a little bit older of a motherboard. So even though I tried to use my integrated graphics card just for the primary boot device, I had issues since it was displaying on other displays. And I actually found a workaround that works really well. So hopefully somebody can benefit from this. So as you can see in the background, I have Catalina, macOS Catalina, and that has its own RX 570 that's liquid cooled, passed over through vfio, as well as a BCM, I think 360S, and it's on a PCI slot. So I've got handoff, airdrop, all that stuff working just out of the box as soon as I boot the virtual machine. So I know I mentioned this later on in the video, but Some Ordinary Gamers is really the guy who planted the seed in my mind to start virtualizing. Before his initial video on it, I had absolutely no idea. You could pass over graphics cards and stuff like that. So I actually get way better performance from my CPU specifically with the IOMMU, and it's actually fascinating how this Arch Linux operating system runs alongside this other one. I don't even notice that it's there, and I mean, I've got a separate keyboard and mouse that I can go and use a full system if I restart this computer and go into Windows. So later on in the video, I detail how I got around that monitor issue, and yeah, it's just involves setting some Grub parameters and setting the graphics payload to console, and then no matter what your motherboard tries to do, your Grub can show up on any screen, but with that parameter in there, it doesn't matter. As soon as you hit your kernel with vfio, all the displays get shut off, and until you load your plasma or whatever, the drivers aren't touched. So you can essentially still have a clean ROM for your graphics card. So anyways, hopefully you guys like the video, and we'll get right into it now. How's everybody doing? I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I know there's a lot of people who detail how to do a KVM operating system. First of all, to get this out of the way, shout out to Some Ordinary Gamers. I've been building Hackintosh computers for a long time, and I had some issues getting my CPU to be recognized through Clover inside the actual Macintosh operating system. Hyper-threading and things like that weren't working, as well as power management. But ever since I saw Some Ordinary Gamers' original video about doing IOMMU, it kind of blew my mind and, like I said, planted a seed because I didn't know you could actually pass over an entire graphics card. So just like I said, short and sweet, this is my build here, and I've got a couple other things to show you that I feel like he didn't explain just because he has newer hardware. But I had a little bit of difficulties getting my host operating system to, so basically I've got an older motherboard, right? And what would happen is, even though I would choose in my BIOS for the computer to boot up Grub on my integrated GPU, for some reason it was choosing to boot up on all my screens. So that caused an issue. And I found a fix for that by adding a set graphics payload to console. And then basically whatever happens is, as soon as your operating system boots, or your PC boots, it'll show your Grub on whatever screen you want. But then as soon as you pick the IOMMU kernel that has IOMMU enabled with that graphics option, all this displays will shut off. And make sure that none of them are accessible to the operating system. And then once you get to your desktop, the only one that will load up is the one that doesn't have vfio. So in my case, I have multiple kernels, and I can actually boot my system with vfio completely unbinded to anything. But yeah, long story short, that's going to be when I show you my host operating system. But as you can see, handoff and iMessages are working here. I've got a couple different texts injected here, but I'll just show you quickly there. Some of them I don't actually need, they're just for testing purposes, like this generic USB-C or USB-X and hibernation fix-up. I wasn't having any issues without them, but I just kind of tested it to see if it would help with any of the, just whatever. One issue I'm going to touch on really quickly, though, is when I upgraded from OpenCore to, from Clover to OpenCore, as well as Catalina at the same time, I noticed I had this issue where my computer OpenCore would no longer recognize the macOS SSD to boot from, and it's kind of weird just because it was listed as a vert.io drive in Vert Manager. And I have it installed on a software RAID, so it's MD01 or something. It's my two SSDs working together for a partition, and that's where this, KVM operating system lives. So I get fast read and write speeds, but the thing is I had to turn it to a SATA partition for OpenCore to recognize it to boot from. So that's, out of every single thing, that's my only one issue right now. So if anybody has a fix for that, please share. Let me know what I should do differently. But yeah, so I'm going to get into my host operating system now, and I'm going to show you the configuration files that made it possible for me to boot, like I said, from Grub, can be displayed on any screen that I have, but then as soon as I select my vfio kernel and operating system, all the displays are disconnected, and it leaves my boot GPU intact to be passed over. So yeah, that's the main point of this video, is just detailing that. There's not really too much else to say, but hopefully everybody's good, and hopefully somebody appreciates this video, because it's definitely fun for me to do. So take it easy, and I'll see you in the host video. Alright guys, this is the initial video here, where I'm going to explain a problem that I had with booting my computer with vfio. Sorry for the choppy video here, it's just the webcam that I'm working with. It's not exactly detected correctly in my Arch Linux right now. That's just something else that I'm working on. But okay, so let's get into this build. And I'll show some pictures after, which exactly explains what I'm talking about. But the issue I have is I have this motherboard that's a little bit older, and what was happening is, obviously you guys know when you go to use a vfio pass-through for a graphics device, you can't have that graphics device being accessed whatsoever on your host boot device, right? So the thing is, in my BIOS, I would set that I wanted my primary display boot device to be my integrated graphics display monitor for my processor, so my integrated graphics card. But what was happening is the display for Grub would show up on a couple different of my monitors. So when I would boot Linux, it would start all the other video drivers, and then when I would go to pass through the device, it just wouldn't work because it messed up the ROM file. So as you can see here, I've got a command file where I've pretty much used all these commands to help me configure this system. I'm going to share that in a Google Drive for you guys. Oh, excuse me. But basically what I want everybody to gain from this is I'm going to pull over my Grub configuration file here. And what you want to do is where you see these terminal input, terminal output, and Grub graphics mode, you want to change those to console like I have here. And what that's going to do is effectively what I just explained. So when your Grub starts, you have the ability to start on whatever monitor you want. Like I said, because for whatever reason your BIOS is not letting you just boot into one display. And then, I have two kernels for this Arch operating system, and one of them has modconf removed, so I'll have no vfio enabled, which is actually what I'm booted in right now. So I can still run virtual machines and stuff like that, as you can see. And it's going to connect properly. It's just the devices that I have passed through, they're effectively going to be on their Linux variant drivers. So I won't be able to pass through these PCI devices because they won't get on vfio correctly right now. But I have two boot entries, okay, and that's where this comes in. I actually use Grub Configurator just because it's a little bit easier for me to manage them, because I've got so many different boot parameters and things like that. But you can do it right from here. So this is essentially where you want to set that to console, and then just regenerate your Grub, and then everything will be good. You'll start without it. But so what happens is when it starts in console mode is every display is disabled when you hit that Grub entry. You boot up to the operating system, and then only the drivers that are binded will actually have a display on it. So effectively, when I set that to console, all my VFO drivers get loaded initially, and they don't get affected whatsoever by the host operating system. But when I remove modconf on my custom kernel, it everything binds as it normally would as a normal system, and I still have vfio enabled. I won't be able to pass through devices that require it from a boot process. So here's my vfio off. And as you can see, I just have my set graphics payload to auto. So when this starts up, it'll start up on whatever display. It's fine. But with my vfio enabled, this is where it gets interesting. This is where I've set this parameter here, and it says set graphics payload equals console. And then my displays that have the vfio device, they'll just have a black screen with a little bit of writing on them from that initial output. And then when I go to boot up the virtual machine, it starts up just perfectly. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show in this segment here. I'm going to do some out-of-screen recording of the actual boot process, just so you guys get a better idea of things. But yeah, so I'm going to post this here, because this is basically everything I've needed to get stuff set up, as well as, like, if you want system information, I've just set up a little USB, LSPCI and whatnot, so that it just saves it to a file on your computer. You can open up the text document and you can view it. It makes it a lot easier. Also, this is the IOMU check, virt manager stuff. So this is how I set up my network drive. This is how I pass over a partition to the virtual machine, like a virt IO drive. I actually use that for Windows and Mac. It starts up on the 1 terabyte drive, and it's just there. I put my games and everything like that, movies, whatever media, crap like that. Yeah, so this is the script to create the new custom MK init CPIO, and I'll just show you here the two differences. I think I've got it actually saved here. I've also got RAID set up, the software RAID, and this document shows how to do that too. So let me just go into this. Sorry, I've got quite a few different partitions. I've actually hidden some others just because it gets confusing. I believe it's in my home. Let me see where I put it. Okay, so yeah, I put it here on this drive. Okay, I actually didn't output it, so let's just go and run one of these commands. So this is the custom one, and what this is going to do is it's going to show me my custom kernel script. So every time I regenerate this new custom kernel, it's going to have these settings. So I added in my vfio stuff. This is for, right there, that's for MDMA, which is MDADM, which is for RAID setup. So I've got that, but then as you can see, hooks, I removed modconf. So basically everything that I do with vfio binding doesn't occur on the boot process because of that modconf being removed. And that keeps things simple, because, like, I'll show you here, I can Control X that, and now I'll just go into my original stock kernel, and I'll show you the configuration for that one. I've got everything that's the exact same. I actually don't have the AMD and Intel stuff, just because I don't need it. It's binded. But in the hooks down here, I've got modconf, and that's what allows me to boot in two different kernels, with one vfio binded and all that stuff, and one with not. So it's just a little bit of stuff there. Let's just, I'll show you my PCI list. And actually, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and do that again, just so we have enough room to see it all. But yeah, so as you can see here, I've got this Broadcom. It's actually straight out of a Mac, and I put that in a PCI conversion thing. And what that does is it gives me handoff, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth in Catalina, just basically out of the box. And then that's basically, I bind this device ID to VFIO. I also do it to my graphics card and the sound device of my processor. So right here, I bind that. And yeah, that's basically, oh yeah, I also give the other operating systems a USB 3 PCI slot, which gives me 4 USB 3 ports for the virtual machine. So that's basically it here. And I'll just post some pictures and maybe do a little recording of actually the boot process of these operating systems. But hopefully this stuff has been helpful for you guys. And yeah, hopefully somebody out there ends up appreciating this. Oh yeah, and if you like this kind of thing, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. I'm really new to this, but it's definitely cool to show off something like this that I've done. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.